Hey, Doug, can you hear me?
I can, but I think everybody else can too.
Oh, that's fine. I just want to make sure you could hear me.
Nope, mic works.
Awesome. Hello, welcome to the Kendall Connection Live June 2021. Today, we'll be talking about the considerations for modernizing your infrastructure and control systems. My name is Jason Duncan, and I will be presenting along with Bill Daggett. So let's look at our agenda for today. First, we're going to give you an overview of what CPWE, Converged Plant-Wide Ethernet. Challenges associated with the converged architectures that CPWE helps to address. Some of the CPWE reference architectures. How can we help? Stratix overview and new products. Considerations for modernizing control systems. Demonstration of tools available to help your modernization journey. You have systems that look like below. You have PLC 5s, SLCs. You have legacy networks such as Data Highway Plus, Remote I/O, Device Net, Control Net, Profibus, Modbus. What about standard panel views? What is CPWE, Converged Plant-Wide Ethernet? Here is a holistic blueprint for digital transformation. It's called the Converged Plant-Wide Ethernet, or CPWE. If you look at the diagram, this diagram illustrates that CPWE simplifies network design by connecting industrial operations and business systems together in a way that is seamless and secure. The siloed networks of the past can now be integrated into the CPWE architecture, providing greater real-time visibility into the state of industrial operations. This seamless connectivity is also achieved through the use of open systems. One key innovation is the ability to leverage IIoT, or the Industrial Internet of Things, the data from these smart devices in your industrial operations. With CPWE, you can now build a common architecture framework which makes the network data ready and provides you with the tools to effectively transport, store, and manage data for key business insights. Here's just an example of the different levels of a converged plant-wide Ethernet architecture. As you can see highlighted in blue, this is what we call our operational technology, our plant site level. This is where your control systems typically live. And as you can tell here, we're showing 3 different areas or cells. Each plant, that's going to be different. We could have multiple cells and areas. Next, you see the industrial IT. Typically, what you're going to find at this level is your FactoryTalk application service, services platforms, maybe the network manager. You're going to have your virtualized or physical servers here. One of the things that I want you to notice at the industrial IT level is the IDMZ, which is shown at level 3.5. This is one of the key points that we have when we're talking about a converged plant-wide Ethernet, the integration between the OT and IT. This is called an industrial demilitarized zone. And the last you'll see is the information technology level, levels 4 and 5. Typically what you'll see on this is the data centers with your ERP business systems, email servers, web servers, and your security services. CPWE Industrial Cybersecurity Framework. This is a defense in depth ISA IEC 62443 NIST 800-82, DHS, CISA, ICS. So why has cybersecurity become so important? Ransomware. Did you know the recent Colonial Pipeline attack, they made the decision to pay a ransom of $4.4 million? Ransomware is becoming more prevalent every day. The number of cyber attacks are continuing on the rise at alarming rates. Some of the challenges that CPWE helps to address: increased network demand, capital budget constraints, skills on staff, and data security. Modernization can be complex and must address numerous pain points. Siloed networks, limited security, skills gap, data management, and sometimes complexity of the solutions. Here's an example of a network that's typically what I see in most industrial environments. If you notice, this network is very flat, open, and non-resilient. Some of the issues that you'll have with this is, of course, we create larger LANs, local area networks. We don't have any natural boundaries or any type of natural segmentation with these flat, open networks. So if you look on the left, again, here's our flat, open, non-resilient network. And over to the right is how we would approach this with a CPWE. This is what CPWE helps to address. So what we have is smaller connected LANs. We create boundaries and we segment these different areas or cells out within the plant. This helps with our hardening of the network and also with security. So let's talk about some CPWE reference architectures. Here's just a screenshot of all of the different architected, tested, and validated designs. As you can tell, we have a lot of different literature depending on what you would like to focus on. You notice everything points back to the baseline in the middle. I wanted to put this slide in to the presentation just to show you what we have available as far as the design guides with links and white papers on each of these different types of architectures, topics. And what we will do is we'll send out a link after our presentation today with this particular slide where you can just click on the hyperlinks on any of the specific documents you'd like to see. So how can we help and where to start? I cannot stress this high enough. Have a standard network assessment done. So you might ask, what is a standard network assessment? Well, what a standard network assessment, or what we'll call an SNA, it helps you better understand your current network and potential risks. Questions to ask yourself. Do you have a maintenance service person who comes into your facility that can make configuration changes to a controller? Should everyone have access, or should only certain people have access to make these types of configuration changes? Do you know who performs which actions? Do you have a team that does a complete security audit, more than just a network scan? Have you considered how security risks can cause safety risks? Do you know what assets you have on your network? And last, do you have a plan to address security risk in your system today? So if you have questions or want to know how to get started, be sure and contact your Kendall Electric associate. So now let's talk a little bit about some of the new products that we've came out with and a real quick overview of some of our Stratix switching. This is a good diagram showing from left to right, from an unmanaged all the way up to our high performance managed switches. So if you look to the left, we have the Stratix 2000, which is an unmanaged switch. The Stratix 2500, which has now been out for a couple of years, that's our lightly managed switch. Our Stratix 5700 and Armor Stratix 5700, fully managed switches, along with the Stratix 5400. One of the new lines that we've came out with in the past year is the Stratix 5800. And of course, we have the rack-based Stratix 5410. At the bottom, you'll see where we've got our FactoryTalk Network Manager software. If you've not seen a demonstration of the Network Manager software, be sure and get in touch with your Kendall associate and schedule that. I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the Stratix 8000, 8300 end of life. This was announced back in December 2019, and they were discontinued at the end of November 2020. As I mentioned earlier about the Stratix 5800, this is a new switch that's came out this year. This is a fixed or modular based switch. It is an all gigabit port. You have the option of copper, power over Ethernet, and if you notice on the right, we can now put expansion modules on the 5800. You can get combinations again with the expansion modules of whatever you need, whether it's copper, power over Ethernet, or fiber. Another new product is the 1783 CSP. This is our SIP security proxy. This allows non-SIP security devices to be connected to it. So you might ask, what is SIP security? Well, what SIP security can do is help prevent unauthorized connection to those devices. It can also prevent the modification or tampering of data, or even the viewing of sensitive data. Be sure and contact your local Kendall Electric associate on details on how we can help with network security or even possibly doing a network security posture survey. Another new product that's soon to be released is the Stratix 4300 remote access router. If you need remote access securely, we have several different products that we can go to, either Encompass Partners or the new Stratix 4300. Just get in touch with your Kendall associate and we can look at the application and see what's best. So now let's talk about considerations for modernizing your control systems. This is a picture of modernizing a PLC5 system to ControlLogix. If you notice, we have pre-built wiring systems to where you don't even have to rewire the I/O. Do you have any SLCs in your plant? Did you know some of the processors are discontinued? Some of the I/O modules are discontinued and several are end of life. We also have an end of life and discontinued date on some of the L3X compact Logix controllers and the L4X compact Logix controllers. So have you started your journey to migrate the compact Logix L32E, L35E, and the compact Logix L43 and L45 controllers to the new compact Logix 5380? Here's an example of upgrading a L32/L35E, your current system, to the new 5069 compact Logix controller. If you need to retain the I/O, you can do that. With the 1769 ANTR, we can retain your I/O and your existing power supply. If you're using the serial port, we also have a serial adapter available for the 5069 Compact Logix controller. Have you started your journey to migrate your SLC 500 systems to the Compact Logix 5380? So here's an example of retaining your I/O and upgrading a SLC 500. So if you look on the left, you can see your SLC 500 system, and this is what it would look like on the right once you've upgraded, keeping your existing I/O. If you notice, we do have an Ethernet IP adapter for the I/O, which is the 1747 ANTR. That'll go in the slot 0 where your SLC 500 processor is today. Then we would have our Compact Logix 5380 control that I/O. What if you wanted to replace the I/O and modernize the entire control system? Today, we have those same 1492 swing arms that's available with the PLC5s, where you don't even have to rewire that SLC I/O. The Compact Logix will set on top with the wiring system, and we can replace the existing system without even having to rewire the I/O. So now I'm going to turn it over to Bill Daggett. He's going to show some of the modernization tools to help you achieve some of these upgrades as you go through them.
Thank you, Jason. Today we're going to talk about migrating legacy control systems to newer platforms and demonstrate some of the tools with software that can take those older applications and bring them forward with minimal effort. As many of you know, taking care of older control systems represents a real challenge. Keeping older computers operational and older software, finding spare parts, there's just a whole host of issues involved with that. So eventually it becomes cost effective to upgrade your older control systems to a newer platform so you can gain back the reliability and the efficiency that you expect. So with that, we're going to look at how to migrate older panel views and older PLCs to the latest product offerings. So let's get started. Let's talk about Integrated Architecture Builder software, which is a tool used to run configuration assistance that can suggest hardware platforms based on users' input. The software also validates those components to make sure that you have all the cables and parts and racks and power supplies properly selected. So let's take a look at that. I've already got the software launched. It comes up on the splash screen. From there, you can create a new project. Now, you might ask yourself, how would you get the training to use the software? So before I start showing you the software, I want to show you what I did. Anytime I use the software and I don't know how to do something, I can come to the learning page. And here I'm just going to type in the word migrate and search. And it's exactly what I was looking for, SLC to Compact Logix migration. It's going to launch a PDF file. The PDF file launches in your browser, but it's on your hard drive. In this document, there's a lot of explanation on how it works. It's very extensive. There's about 10 pages of actual lab instruction that I use to actually configure project. We'll see all these same screens in just a moment. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention that the help is built into the software for using the software. This is the software. I'm going to open an existing project to save some time. This is SLC Migration Wizard. I have set up a couple of different scenarios where I'm migrating some SLCs. It makes an entry under available assistance. When you make a new entry, it'll categorize it under these different types of wizards. I'm going to edit this one because it already exists. These are 3 different scenarios that I entered. Each one is a different PLC system. I'm going to hit Edit Chassis on the first one. And it's going to come up. This particular one, the way this works is you decide whether you want to retain your existing I/O, and then with what processor do you want to replace just the processor with, or you can completely replace the I/O with the 3 different types of Logix processors. So in this situation, I'm retaining the I/O, and all I do is I drag and drop the I/O modules from this list, and I populate them as my control system currently is. So I have my processor, which is an L531, and on this one I've got 3 blank slot covers. And if I come down, there's a second rack. There's your interconnect cable. And then here, I've got 3 IA8s. And then here I have 3 IB16s. As soon as you get done adding these, and you've already picked your processor, when you make this menu selection, it pops up and asks you which processor in the family that you picked that you'd like to use. And it typically has an automatically suggests the one that matches the controller you have. But at that point, you can either upsize or downsize the controller from there. And then down here, it's already populated your I/O. So here's your new rack. Notice it's got exactly the same cards in it as before. But if you look at the first slot here, we now have an Ethernet adapter card, and that Ethernet would communicate with this compact Logix. That's a pretty easy thing to do. You would need to define your racks before you put your I/O in. So you've got up to 3 racks on a SLC with a total of 30 slots. This one has a 4-slot chassis and then an interconnect cable. So you check the box, and then a secondary chassis, which is 7-slot. And then you can define your power supplies as well, and it will suggest the proper power supplies in the migrated hardware. So let's look at another one. This one is a single rack. Down here, you've got a 1 7-slot rack with a B7 power supply. And then the processor itself that it's selected is it'll pop up, an L71 control Logix, and it also adds an Ethernet card. And down here, the migrated hardware, it automatically adds an AENTR Ethernet adapter. And then here's your same I/O, your same rack, your same power supply that you already own. So at this point, it's suggesting a power supply, a rack, a processor, an Ethernet card, and then an Ethernet adapter to replace this older controller. Now, if I wanted to not retain the I/O, but I wanted to replace it with a control Logix, if I just select that, it's going to pop up and say, which processor would you like to replace it with? I can use the same L71, or I can pick one of these others, and I'll hit OK. And then one of the I/O modules, it says there's multiple configurations available, but it suggests this one. So there's the totally new rack. In this case, you'd be buying new I/O modules, a larger rack, and then the processor and the power supply. And if you'll notice, it did not suggest an Ethernet module because there's no Ethernet on the existing one. If you wanted to add an Ethernet module after you generate your bill of materials, you could just pick the next rack size larger and then also pick an Ethernet module to go in it. So, but this gives you the exact hardware to replace your existing system. Then on this last one, there's one other scenario that we can look at. And on this one, there's no processor. Instead, there's an adapter in the rack. So this would be a remote rack going back to a control net processor somewhere else. And it's got a couple of IB16s and a couple of IB32s. So in that case, there is no processor at all. And down here, we simply replace the control net adapter with an Ethernet adapter and have the same I/O again. So there's only one module to purchase to convert that one. So After you've done, these three scenarios are considered to be one project. There are three different conversions, so you can have multiple conversions in one project, and when you're done, you hit Generate Hardware. Then after it's done, I come down and I pick the Hardware tab right here, and I can see my bills of materials. In that first scenario, here's the Ethernet adapter that replaced the processor, and then here's your existing I/O, and then here's the new controller with the power supply, and then it has no I/O on it. So, and then we could go through and look at the others as well. But now, if you want to look at the entire bill of material together as a parts list, we can generate that. Okay, so the bill of material has been generated, and there's a total at the bottom for all three migrations that we entered into Integrated Architecture Builder. There's also subtotals for each. Now, these are list prices, and you may have special pricing agreements in place. I believe they use list price, so typically customers will pay something less than this. You can export this to Excel for your own use, and at that point you have a completed bill of materials which you can add to or take away from, or do whatever you like with. So that's the Integrated Architecture Builder. The next thing we're going to do is look at the RSLogix 500 software and use the export to ControlLogix feature to migrate a SLC 500 to ControlLogix. So let's look at the SLC 500 software and how to do an export to ControlLogix. I'm going to open up a demo file. Just wanting to open it read-only since it's a sample file. So I have a program here that has quite a bit of ladder logic in it. It has lots of timers and counters and inputs and outputs and some I/O cards, and it's pretty extensive. It has 5 different ladder files and a bunch of data files. So the way that this is done now is not through a standalone program the way it used to be done. It's now embedded in the latest version of RSLogix 500. And what we do is we hit Save As, and we save it as a Logix Designer file. And then you make your selections. You can leave all this at default. It's going to preserve your documentation and your processor name and bring it forward. And we hit Save, and it brings up the Logix controller capacity selection. And you want to pick whether you want to use ControlLogix or CompactLogix, and then you can hit your pull down and you can pick either from ControlLogix controllers here or from CompactLogix controllers. So we're going to use ControlLogix, and we're going to use an L81E, and then we hit Next. And I don't want to keep the existing I/O. I'm going to update it this time, and then we need to pick the appropriate cards. Now, your appropriate cards would come from your bill of material from your Integrated Architecture Builder, as we looked at just a moment ago. So select those cards, and these are pretty much one-for-one replacements. Actually, that's a 16 point there. I could pick an 8 either way. And then I hit Migrate, and then when it's done, I hit Launch. And it's going to launch the RSLogix Studio 5000 software. This is the software for the ControlLogix and CompactLogix controllers. And it's going to take a moment. It's actually doing an import right now and preparing all the documentation and converting it over. So it'll take a little bit. All right, now here I'm going to hit import, and we let it do the import of the ladder logic at this point. Notice down here it's doing some error checking while it's bringing it in. If you'll notice that there was 0 errors, 0 warnings, but there's 177 messages. And then if we look, we now have a main routine. The main routine only has one instruction, which is an event instruction to jump to this main ladder routine, which is right here. So it's telling it to run on each scan of the main routine right here. And then if we go look at this is where all of the SLC 500 logic is located. You've got your 5 subroutines that we had in the other software. And if we go look at these, all of your run comments and your ladder logic and some automatically generated information as well from the utility all comes over. Now, what you will notice is that it'll put a red X to the left of any instruction that has a timer or reference to a timer in it. And what it's going to want you to do is go back and look at your timers and make sure that the presets are correct, because the time base on a SLC 500 or PLC 5 is variable. There's 0.01 seconds and 1 second, and even on the PLC 5 a 10-second interval, whereas on the control logics it's always 0.001, 1/1000th of a second, and so you'd have to double check those and make any corrections. And other than that, though, the ladder logic is all there, and it's a pretty solid conversion. You can look over here. You can see that you've got your I/O modules that we specified. Everything looks good. So at that point, you would just save it and make sure everything's good with your timers, and then go download it and test it with your hardware. So it's a huge time saving. So I highly recommend it. So that is the conversion built into the SLC 500 software to migrate to Control Logics or Compact Logics. So now let's look at a method to import a panel view 1400E, which is a legacy panel view from the early 90s into a Panel View Plus environment using the FactoryTalk View Studio software. I'm going to go and create a new application. I'm going to give it a name. Select Import. Select the Panel Builder 1400E application. Keep in mind here, you can also import the Panel View Standard product, which is a different type of panel view that has been sold since the early 90s as well. And you can also import other FactoryTalk View Machine Edition projects, possibly older versions as well. So we're going to pick the 1400E, hit next. We're going to go pick the file. It is on my desktop. And we're going to hit next. I want this application to be 800 by 600 resolution because my target panel view that I plan to use, a 10-inch panel view, is that particular resolution. And notice I've got the scale graphics displays selected as well. All right, then I'm going to hit finish and let it run its course. The import is doing a lot of work. It's converting graphics, converting tags, all of the text objects, push buttons, pilot lights, selectors. So it takes a little bit of time for it to run. It's creating the project. Importing the screens. It also imports the trend objects and all of the images from the previous application. And when we're done, you'll see that it's a very thorough import and an accurate representation of the existing panel view that you have. Okay, now we're done. Let's go take a look at the graphics. There's the main menu, and that looks exactly like the previous panel view. And we can go look at some of the other. That's a really nice graphic. So sometimes the fonts need to be resized. The fonts that were used years ago a lot of times don't look as good as the newer fonts that we have today, or they may be too tall and narrow. That's all cosmetic stuff and can be fixed with ease. All of these screens have come through, so there's a bunch, so we won't go through all of them, but it's fairly thorough. It creates a tag database, and there's all the tags. And if you look, it's pretty substantial. There's 40, and then you've got all these subfolders, various tags. And if we go look at these tags, the tag structure itself, there's something called a shortcut that we use in the new panel views, and this portion of the tag is actually a shortcut. So you can copy it from any of these tags, and they all have the same shortcut in them, unless there's multiple PLCs that the panel view is talking to. And then we can come down and do one final thing to make the conversion complete, and that is to set up the communications. Now, I won't be able to completely set up the communications because I don't have a PLC connected right now, but I'll show you the concept. So you hit add, and then I'm going to paste in that shortcut name that I copied. And then what I would do here is I would highlight that as it is, and then I would browse out on my Ethernet, which I don't have a controller anywhere to connect to. There's something right there. That's something running on my PC. It does have a virtual backplane, but we're not going to find a PLC connected. But let's say that was a PLC. We would highlight it, highlight this, and then hit the apply button, which is grayed out right now, but would be active if that were a valid target. And then that would link this shortcut to that particular controller through this network path. And then we would hit verify and then OK. And then that would complete the conversion. Now, at that point, you'd want to go test run it and make sure that all of the graphics were lined up. They look good to me. So that's how panel views are converted. The conversion utility is built into the new Factory Talk View Studio software, and it'll import all of the previous versions of panel views going back into the early 90s. The software for the 1400E has an import utility that can actually import previous versions before the 90s. The very first panel view was DOS based, and the file from it can be imported into the 1400E software, saved, and then that file imported into this software. So through two steps, we can actually import the very first panel views that were available in the 80s. With that demonstrates how the panel view import works. That concludes my technical demonstration. If you guys have any questions, we're going to have a Q&A for both Jason and I, and any questions you may have had throughout this presentation, just feel free to ask them, and hopefully we can answer.
Hey, Bill, Jason, Bob, I'm sticking a quick commercial in before we get to the Q&A. So if you're listening and you have a question, please just list it in the Q&A and we'll get to it here in just a second. Rockwell recently acquired a company named Fix. And much like we talk about Ethernet IP being a modern network and control logics and compact logics being modern controllers, Fix makes maintenance software that is also modern. It's a cloud-based application and allows you to do easy asset management, everything from repair history to parts consumption. There's an integration hub built in that makes data flows pretty easy to set up between storeroom software or other enterprise software packages. And your maintenance scheduling and work orders can be much more efficient because there's native mobile applications available. Your field people can work orders, update, take notes on whatever mobile device they've got access to. And then it also does some cool artificial intelligence kind of stuff, and that you can connect to any manufacturer's controllers basically and make use of that information to do predictive maintenance as opposed to strictly taking care of reactive maintenance issues. So if you don't have a maintenance system in place, let's say you're still using paper or whiteboard to divvy out work orders and that sort of thing to your maintenance group, or if you are somewhat displeased with your current system, we'd love to discuss what Fix does with you. Just get with your account manager and let them know that you'd like to see how Fix works. And with that, Bob, we'll get to the Q&A.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We've got quite a few questions, so please keep them flowing in, and we'll get to them in the order that they were received. We didn't answer the questions immediately during the presentation just to keep the flow going, but we'll start back at the beginning. Does a DMZ prevent malware attacks? Jason, you want to take that, or would you want me to take that?
If you want, Bob, go ahead, since you are our networks engineer.
Okay, great. So a DMZ, is a, demilitarized zone. That's what DMZ stands for, between your enterprise network. So, where you've got all your emails and, everybody's looking at their ERP systems, maybe SAP resides there. That's like your corporate network. And the DMZ is the demilitarized zone between that network and your controls network. So that could be, where all your controllers lie and drives and IO. What we do with the DMZ is we restrict the traffic that goes from the enterprise network to the DMZ. So yes, it does do a lot to mitigate that risk of malware. So if malware, the easiest way to get malware, is probably via the internet. And if, everybody's surfing the internet or, going to internet sites on the corporate side, the chances of a ransomware getting in are probably going to be on the corporate side. And with that DMZ, we would block unnecessary traffic and prevent that malware from hopefully crawling across that DMZ and going into your controls network. So it doesn't outright prevent it, but it goes a long way in a defense in depth strategy to mitigating your risk for malware.
So Bob, back to that, would you say that's one of the most important pieces to the CPWE?
I would say it's very foundational. So if you have a flat network right now where everything's accessible to everybody, so Susie and HR can see a PLC on the plant floor, a DMZ is going to go a long way to preventing that type of communication. And then we add layers beyond on top of that would go beyond the DMZ. But the DMZ is absolutely foundational. So if I didn't answer that question, please feel free to ask any more details further down in the questions and answers tab. The question and answer tab looks like a bubble chat at the top of your Teams meeting, where you can press on that and you can ask any questions.
One other thing I'll add to that, Bob, if I'm a customer and I'm concerned that I might be at risk for this, do we have any type of security assessment or anything that we could do for those customers?
Absolutely, and that's a great question, Jason. So what we can do is we can come into your facility and we can do what we would call a security posture survey. During that security posture survey, a Kendall Electric network engineer will very transparently, and when I mean transparently, I mean like they're not getting an IP address, they're just, you know, connecting up to your network, and they're going to mirror some traffic. They're going to capture traffic that's going to cross your network. With that traffic, we're going to take that offsite and we're going to analyze it along with Rockwell to help see, you know, who's communicating to what. So do you have a PLC that's communicating outside your network? It's going to show that. Does it see malicious traffic on your network? So maybe you already have a virus or something on your network that's, you know, there's plenty of traffic going along that we can spot. We're going to see that. And so that's really going to give you a great idea of cybersecurity wise. It's like a snapshot of what your network looks like today. And with that, we can tailor, you know, policies or maybe, you know, firewall rules that will help mitigate your risk. So security posture survey is a great tool. A lot of people are using it, and we're having great success with it. If you're interested in one of those, contact your Kendall Electric account manager. Okay, moving on to the next question. So does IAB create a network layout like you showed in the reference architectures when you use it to build a system? Are the IAB networks reference architecture networks?
Yeah, I'll take that,
Okay.
Bob. So IAB has a network infrastructure selection, and it is based off of the CPWE reference architectures. So I always suggest to customers as they are laying out their networks, their control systems, do all of that inside IAB. That will help check, you know, the check boxes to make sure you're not doing something that, you know, that's not allowed.
Great. Yeah, I would add IAB is based off that CPWE. When you're creating a network within IAB, it is based off those CPWE architectures that Jason talked about earlier in the presentation. So it really does make things a lot easier for you. Next question is, are there any issues migrating panel views that are on an old network like Remote IO or DeviceNet? I believe that one's probably going to be for Bill.
Yeah, I'll take that one. The Panel View 5000 is a newer panel view, and it operates in a different way than Panel View Pluses, which have the ability to access some legacy networks and communicate with older controllers. The Panel View 5000 is designed to work with ControlLogix only as an integrated part of that family. So it does not have migration tools the way that the Panel View Plus has. So if you're going to be bringing an older legacy system forward, our recommendation right now is to stay with the Panel View Plus, which is a very mature and feature-rich product. The Panel View 5000 is a newer product, and it's going to take probably a couple more years before all the features and functions that are in the Panel View Plus currently are there. And I wouldn't be surprised to see something in the future, but today the Panel View Plus is would be the target HMI to migrate to. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, so I personally have a question about the panel views. So if I have you know, a legacy panel view that's on like DeviceNet, and now I'm going to go to a panel view plus that's on Ethernet, what issues should I be aware of going from DeviceNet to Ethernet? Is there any kind of addressing issues or anything I should be aware of?
Yes, sir. The legacy networks that are IO based, like DeviceNet and Remote IO, both share the same problem in that the tags in the panel view are actually using either a block transfer reference, which would be a word and bit in a block transfer number, which is not the actual address that is in the PLC. So the Remote IO kind of acts as a middleman to get the data into the program, the PLC program, or read it back. So with that, when you go to a peer-to-peer network like Ethernet or Data Highway Plus or even the old DH45 or Serial, we use direct reference to the tag name. There are no direct references, and you have no idea where the remote I/O block transfers are being mapped to, or the device net words are being mapped to through the scanner. So with that, any of the I/O based legacy networks, you'll have to manually readdress all of your objects in the panel view. Fortunately, those are less commonly used now. There are very few device net panel views in use. The old remote I/O, we do see more of that. Rockwell does have a good document on the most efficient and effective way to convert that, but it does require some engineering to get that done. So hopefully that answers your question, Bob.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next question we had is, what is the version of RSLogix 500 to save as an ACD file? And is that version free to download?
That would be version 12. There haven't been many releases of RSLogix 5 or 500, but they did make a new release pretty much to include this migration tool in that release. So those are the final releases, I would say, unless there's any bug fixes. But it is not free to download. If you have a Tech Connect, you can download it. You should be entitled to get that update. So if you don't have an active service contract, you might want to talk to one of your salesmen and have them get you a quote. There are lower cost Tech Connects that are software update only, so typically they're less than the cost of purchasing the software, and so it'd be a good opportunity to get back in support. But those are the options that you have. So good question.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, like if you have a Tech Connect contract, RSLogix 500 version 12, which is the version you'll need to do an ACD file, that should be free for you to download. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. If you own an older version of RSLogix 500, that is correct.
Awesome.
If you do not own the software at all, you'll need it to convert. And if you're in a pinch, you can possibly have one of our automation engineers convert the file for you. So it's just a one and done type thing. So.
All right. Well, there was a second part to that same question is can you convert a panel view, the PVA application, which I'm guessing, I'm not a panel view guy, so I'm guessing that's panel view plus applications, to the view logic application instead of using factory talk view?
That would be the same question as converting to panel view 5000. The view designer, I believe, is what he's referring to. That's the HMI software that's included with RSLogix 5000, and that is for the panel view 5000. It currently does not have an import feature in it.
I do know that Rockwell is working on a tool to bring a panel view plus application into View Designer. So if you wanted the PVA application, you might have to do a two-step process once that tool's available. The last I was updated, the next release of View Designer is supposed to have the tool built in.
There you go.
That's certainly great news.
Yep.
And then the next two questions, I believe, follow along the same line. Do the new panel view 5000s have migration tools like you showed for the panel view plus, which you've already answered, that requires the Logix designer. So that's definitely not an option at this time. And then you've already answered, what is RSLogix 500 and is that version free? So I believe that's all. I don't see any new questions. Is there anything that anybody would like to add before we wrap up?
You guys feel free to contact your automation engineer with Kendall and they can certainly assist you if you're doing a migration and you want to sit down with them ahead of time and get a good roadmap and make sure all the tools are in place and that the processor, the target processor you want to migrate to is the right choice. That's something that we do all the time, and we would love to sit down with you and work through that. So
there was one other question, and it's about the presentation, I guess, that I did earlier. Will this presentation be emailed out to participants?
Yeah, Doug, I believe, already answered that, but I'll go ahead and make it.
I'm sorry, I might have missed it. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, if you would like to review this presentation, it's going to be available on our YouTube channel shortly. And even then, if you still want a copy of that presentation filed, then you know, you can get with your Kendall account manager, and we'll make sure to get a copy to you. That should be no problem whatsoever. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I want to thank all of our attendees. Thank you for attending. Wherever you're at in your migration journey, I want you to know that Kendall Electric is here to support you. If you're, you know, going from a legacy network to a Ethernet network, or you've got, you know, old panel views you're migrating, or SLICs or PLC5s, we have the experts and specialists to help you with your migration. Please reach out to your account manager. And again, thank you for attending. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Thank you again.